A very good evening to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. Delighted to have you all join us this evening. Please join me in welcoming our chief guest for the evening, Professor Shafi Goldwasser, the winner of the 2012 Turing Award and director of the Simon Center for Theory of Computing at the University of California, Berkeley. Please give her a big round of applause as we welcome her to this event. And seated with her are the chairpersons of the juries of the Infosys Prize, the trustees of the Infosys Science Foundation, and of course, with them, the winners of the Infosys Prize 2022. I'd like to request all of you to please give them a huge round of applause once again. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Infosys Science Foundation, I'd like to welcome all of you gathered here this very fine evening at the start of this new year. So I'd like to wish you all a happy new year before we begin. And welcome to this evening's Infosys Prize presentation. I'd like to introduce myself to you. My name is Justin Jacob, and I'll be your MC for this event, and it's a privilege. Time and tide wait for no man, as the old saying goes. As we begin the new year, it's perhaps fitting to reflect on the fleeting nature of time and what it means to each one of us. We begin this evening's program with a special performance by Ambi Subramaniam and Rukmini Vijaykumar. Ambi and Rukmini will be presenting Time, a performance of how we perceive time in our modern materialistic world. Ambi Subramaniam is a virtuoso violinist. He trained under his father, the legendary violinist Dr. L. Subramaniam. Ambi is hailed as the new king of Indian classical violin. Rukmini Vijaykumar is a classically trained Bharatanatyam dancer and choreographer. In addition to Bharatanatyam, Rukmini trained at the Boston Conservatory in ballet and modern dance. She has performed as a soloist around the world. Tonight's performance, ladies and gentlemen, is choreographed and performed by Rukmini Vijaykumar, composed and performed by Ambi Subramaniam, with light design by Gyan Dev Singh. Ladies and gentlemen, sit back and enjoy.
We use time to measure the rising and setting of the sun. It serves to coordinate our activities, make appointments, and bring order within a world that might otherwise be chaotic. But is time linear? Is it real in a way that we perceive it? The clock ticks, the pendulum swings, the sun rises and sets, and another day, another month, another year may go by. But do we all see time in the same way at every moment? Scientists have questioned the consistency of time in different scenarios. Poets and artists have repeatedly referred to time as standing still, moving slowly, and even pausing sometimes, as one relishes an emotional connection. We rush through life believing that the time will come when we all leave this earth. We act as though time is limited, but so many cultures believe in the cyclical nature of time and its ability to extend and even travel sometimes within time. Is time real? Does it move faster when we're enjoying something? Pause when we watch a sunset? Drag when we stand in line on a hot day? When we delve into the nature of time, is something far more complex revealed? The nature of the universe, perhaps? The truth of our existence? By navigating time efficiently, enjoying the present, can we learn to live fuller, more beautiful lives? Is death an end to our time on earth? Or does the clock continue to tick even afterward? Time.
Rukmini Vijay Kumar and Ambu Subramaniam. Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed that performance, please give them another big round of applause. Rukmini and Ambu, we'd like to thank both of them for that thought-provoking performance that bridges science, philosophy, and of course, arts. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I don't have to remind you that we have the Infosys Prize ceremony happening in a very short while from now. I'd like to remind all of you that please, as we announce the winners, put your hands together, give them a lot of love and support, and let's make this an evening that they'll remember for a very long time to come. All right, without further ado, I'd like to now invite onto the stage Mr. S. Gopalakrishnan, President of the Infosys Science Foundation, to deliver the opening address.
Let me welcome all of you on behalf of the Infosys Science Foundation to this Infosys Prize 2022 ceremony. In 2025, the UN set out the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The agenda set out a blueprint to provide all the people on the planet now and in the future improved health, education, reduction of inequality, economic security, while also mitigating the effects of climate change. An ambitious goal indeed. And to get there, we need to considerably increase the financial investment in addition to collaboration and political will. An increased infusion of funding from both public and private entities into research is an important part of being able to achieve these targets for current and future generations around the world. Increased funding for science and research is an investment in the future of society and humanity at large. The best return on investment in science and technology is seen in the solutions to urgent issues such as energy transition, climate change, and life-threatening diseases. Solutions to these crises can be found only by funding basic research and engaging in meaningful collaboration. Major breakthroughs in the past 2-3 years alone show us how funding of research over decades have helped us achieve results. Investment in research has helped us not only find solutions, but also venture into unexplored frontiers, such as looking deeper into space than ever before. We would not have had these breakthroughs without government, industry, and philanthropists investing in them over the long term. Multi-cancer detection research, nuclear fission, Alzheimer's drug research, and the James Webb Telescope are some examples of such funding yielding results. While a lot of these breakthroughs have been accomplished outside India, we have particular advantages that should enable us to build world-class research infrastructure here in India. With nearly 20% of the world's population, India has access to a wealth of data as well as the market advantage that this brings. As a low-cost economy, we have the advantage of creating state-of-art research hubs at relatively lower operational costs, but adequate funding is key to making this possible. We also need to learn to use our demographic dividend to train the best talent by funding and providing the best possible educational infrastructure at all levels. Thanks to the Indian IT revolution, we have several decades worth of experience in global collaboration across the board. A beautiful example of one such multilateral collaboration effort is the LIGO project, where a consortium of Indian research institutions are working with LIGO laboratories in the US and other parts of the world. International collaboration brings to the table a diversity of perspectives and thinking, which is crucial to finding the best possible solutions to complex issues. We have begun making some progress in funding cutting-edge research in India. The launch of the Hridayantra at IIT Kanpur that develop an artificial heart, an effort by IIT Madras to digitally map the human brain with its huge potential for furthering research into the brain are just two examples of investment in basic research with the rich dividends that they will offer in lives saved and improvement in quality of life. The US government's Cancer Moonshot Initiative and the international collaborative efforts between NASA, ESA, and CSA to develop the James Webb Telescope and improvement on the Hubble telescope are blueprints for collaborative funding that we should all take inspiration and improve on. Funding research is not just a question of development, but that of human welfare in the long term. The ambitions of initiatives such as the UN SDG and our dreams for a better future for mankind can only be achieved by supporting basic research. Our collective well-being depends on it. Incremental progress in research has helped develop ways of dealing with seemingly intractable problems. Clean energy, climate modeling using AI, early-stage cancer detection and treatment of dementia are few examples of solutions that have come from patient funding and long-term vision. We at Infosys Science Foundation are continuously, in our own way, recognizing the path-breaking research undertaken by scientists working on the frontiers of science and scholarship. They ask the questions that have never been asked before and use their creativity to find answers. This is an endeavor worth supporting. It is indeed an endeavor that we are duty-bound and honored to support. I end by congratulating today's laureates, today's winners, and wish them the very best to scale up further their research work and its impact on society. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Gopalakrishnan. I'd like to request you to please stay back on stage and take your seat. I'd also like to invite our chief guest, Professor Shafi Goldwasser, to please join Chris on stage and take the seat. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope all of you are ready and eagerly waiting for the true stars of the evening. Our first laureate this evening in engineering and computer science uses his knowledge of microfluidics to develop diagnostic devices for resource-limited settings. His handheld thermal imaging device to detect oral cancer could potentially save millions of lives. He received his master's degree in mechanical engineering and PhD from the Indian Institute of Science, Bengaluru. He's a professor of mechanical engineering and Dean Research and Development at the Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur. And now to tell you about his work and to announce the Infosys Prize for Engineering and Computer Science, let me introduce to you the jury chair for this category, the Johnson Professor of Computer Science and Engineering at MIT, Professor Arvind. A brief introduction. Professor Arvind's work was instrumental in the development of dynamic data flow architectures and associated parallel programming languages. He went on to earn his MS and PhD in computer science from the University of Minnesota in Minnesota, and in 2000, after graduating with BTech in electrical engineering from the Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur, he founded Sunburst, a fabless semiconductor company, and in 2003, he co-founded BlueSpec Inc. Professor Arvind has received numerous awards and honors, including the IEEE Charles Babbage Outstanding Scientist Award in 1994, the Distinguished Alumnus Award from IIT Kanpur and the University of Minnesota, and the IEEE Computer Science Harry H. Good Memorial Award in 2012. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in extending a warm welcome this evening to Professor Arvind. And I'd like to request Professor Arvind to announce the winner.
It is my pleasure to announce the Infosys Prize 2022 in Engineering and Computer Science is awarded to Professor Suman Chakravarti of IIT Kharagpur for his pioneering work in elucidating the interaction of fluid mechanics, interfacial phenomena, electromechanics at the micro and nano scales. Using this understanding, he has helped to advance healthcare in resource-limited settings through the intervention of low-cost medical devices for sensing, diagnostics, and therapeutics. Professor Suman Chakravarti is that rare researcher who combines the highest quality of fundamental research with the translation of research into practical use. I am particularly impressed that Professor Chakravarti's work has the potential to expand inexpensive healthcare options in India and abroad. And I'm also so proud that such deep and impactful work originated entirely in India. Before I describe Professor Chakravarti's research, I would like to give you a brief overview of the process by which he was selected. We had 6 eminent jurors for engineering and computer science category. These are Professor Jayati Murthy, now president of Oregon State University, until recently Dean of Engineering at UCLA. Professor Jitendra Malik, Berkeley, Professor Kaushik Bhattacharya, Vice Provost at Caltech, Professor Ashutosh Sharma of IIT Kanpur, Dr. Dhananjaya Dandikuri, founder and CEO of Akira Labs. We held 13 meetings over Zoom to select the winner. Despite our collective expertise, we often had to go out for external experts for better understanding of the research. Now about the work itself. Professor Chakravarti has investigated and achieved numerous important breakthroughs in our understanding of how fluids behave at small scale, with particular emphasis on role of fluid confinement and interaction with boundaries. Think of how blood flows through capillaries, right? Fluid tends to move differently in smaller tubes than they do in larger pipes. And this has important implications for how we understand everything from drug delivery in human body to diagnostics. At very small scale, fluid-fluid and fluid-solid interactions are determined by molecular level interplay and atomistic details of surface structures. Professor Chakravarti has demonstrated that these interactions lead to a variety of unintuitive physical phenomena not encountered at larger scales. For example, surfaces are not conducive to fluid flow can be selectively made conducive to flow by exploiting the molecular and ionic arrangements at the interface between fluid and solid. Professor Chakravarti has exploited these special properties of fluid behavior in small channels to develop new cutting-edge diagnostics and treatment. The development of pharmaceuticals diagnostics can be prohibitively expensive. However, on-chip systems enabled by microfluidics help reduce cost considerably while providing accurate results. Using microfluidics in diagnostics and treatment has the advantage of making these interventions cost-efficient, quick, easy to use, and accurate. During COVID-19 pandemic, Professor Chakravarti and his collaborators developed a nucleic acid-based diagnostic test which helped in quick detection of infectious diseases based on their study of capillary action of fluids. Chakravarti and his team also devised the finger prick blood on paper strip, which is extremely low-cost diagnostics that can measure glucose, lipid profile, hemoglobin from a simple pinprick sized blood sample, which can be analyzed using smartphone apps. Such a device has the advantage of being widely accessible. Professor Chakravarti, and this is the one I like even more, Professor Chakravarti has used microfluidics to develop a handheld device for diagnosing oral cancer. This device uses thermal imaging to detect changes in blood flow in human tissues, thus detecting changes that may indicate tumors. The reason that oral cancer was the focus because this is a common ailment due to tobacco use. Around 1 million people die of oral cancer annually in India, and lack of access to early detection and diagnosis exacerbates a problem. The device doesn't need specialized training to use and doesn't need infrastructure investment. The initial testing, the device has demonstrated an impressively 97% accuracy and has passed phase 1 clinical trials. If it rolls out, it could prove a game changer for rural areas with no access to healthcare or medical personnel and has the potential to save millions of lives. All this translational work is very impressive indeed, and congratulations to Professor Suman Chakravarty, and we hope he will continue to do such creative and useful work.
Thank you very much indeed, Professor Arvind. I'd like to request you to please stay back on stage. And now, here is Professor Chakrabarty talking about what motivates him. Can we have the video, please?
Most of us live, work and rest surrounded by the light of good fortune and comfort. We often forget that just a short distance away is darkness. And in that darkness, there are many more people who do exactly the same without the benefits that we all have. It led me to ask, am I dedicating myself and my passion in science to do something to improve the lives of people? This thought helped me to start a journey of self-discovery. A journey where I understood that a passion to seek answers can sometimes go hand in hand with a passion to improve people's health.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming on stage Professor Suman Chakrabarty. I'd also like to request Mr. Srinath Bhatni, Anchor Trustee for this award category, and Professor Arvind to join us. I'd like to request Professor Goldwasser to present the Infosys Prize in Engineering and Computer Science to Professor Suman Chakrabarty. I'd also like to request all of you to please come together on stage for a photo op. I'd like to thank Mr. Bhatni and Professor Arvind. I'd like to request you to please join the audience. Congratulations to Professor Chakrabarty, and I'd like to invite the professor to say a few words.
Of course, I am extremely honored, humbled, and perhaps this is a recognition that I still do not deserve. Having said that, it is something that will motivate me to do work that remains to be accomplished, and I have always thought that I should try to do. This is a recognition of an individual, but I think that in the backdrop, there are contributions of so many people which lead to something meaningful that we all try to do. Starting from younger days, the extreme sacrifice of my parents, then the school teachers. I would particularly name the teachers of my school, St. Lawrence High School at Kolkata, the teachers of Jadavpur University, Kolkata, my teachers at IISc Bangalore, where I have got 2 major degrees, and I'm extremely honored that my supervisor, Professor Datta, is present here. And of course, a large number of students who are the real engines who keep on driving us, despite that, we are getting busy in several other things. Couple of my students who are currently faculty members of IISc are also here, Alok and Shubhodip, but I'm sure that several others who are there online, and I intend to express my sincere gratitude to everybody, starting from my family members, well-wishers, students, all supporting people. And I feel that with this recognition that the Infosys Science Foundation is giving to me, it will only motivate me to try, do better and better, and possibly to do something of real impact for the benefit of the society and the common people. Thank you so much.
Congratulations once again, Professor Chakraborty, and thank you for telling us what drives you to bring light into the lives of the less privileged, and of course for using your expertise and passion to make a tangible difference in their lives. The Infosys Prize consists of a gold medal, a citation, and a purse of $100,000 in each category. The winners are selected by juries of eminent scientists and scholars who benchmark their work against the very best in the world. In the next category, that of humanities, our laureate is an accomplished legal scholar of constitutional law. He's currently the vice chairman of the National Law School of India University, Bengaluru. He received his academic training at NLS Bengaluru and at Oxford as a Rhodes Scholar. To tell you more, I'm pleased to introduce you to the jury chair for humanities, Professor Akhil Bilgrami, the Sidney Morgan Besser Professor of Philosophy, Professor Committee of Global Thought at Columbia University. Professor Bilgrami got his degree in English literature from Elphinstone College, Mumbai, and then went as a Rhodes Scholar to Oxford University. He has a PhD in philosophy from the University of Chicago. At Columbia University, he has been the chairman of the philosophy department, the director of the Heyman Center for Humanities, and the director of South Asian Institute. He has been the recipient of fellowships and grants from the Mellon Foundation, Ford Foundation, National Endowment of the Humanities, as well as the Luce Foundation. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in extending a warm welcome this evening to Professor Akhil Bilgrami. I'd like to request him to announce the winner.
It is a real pleasure for me to announce the Infosys Prize 2022 for Humanities is awarded to Sudhir Krishnaswamy, who is Professor of Law and Vice Chancellor at National Law School of India University. This award is in recognition of his insightful understanding of the Indian Constitution, especially his carefully argued account of the importance of the landmark basic structure doctrine adopted by the Supreme Court in 1973 that guides and constrains various efforts to amend it, while also ensuring the Constitution's stability in the face of executive and legislative outcomes in India's political life. My colleagues in the distinguished jury panel, which selected Professor Krishnamurthy, were Professor Partha Mitta, Professor Kamala Shankaran, both of whom are here, Professor Claire Harris, and Professor Sanjay Subramaniam. At one crucial point in the long aftermath of legal disputation surrounding land reform legislation in independent India, the Supreme Court declared that there were basic features of the Constitution that no efforts at amending the Constitution can breach. Many of these features were not explicitly articulated as such in written clauses of the Constitution. What then were they? From what sources do we draw them, if not from the written Constitution? With what right do we even so much as say that they exist? What is the scope of the constraints they provide over and above constraining the power of the legislature to amend the Constitution? Should we be anxious that they overextend the power of judicial review and demote democratic decision-making? These are the questions that Sudhir Krishnaswamy takes up and answers with great sagacity and rigorous detail in his work, and in doing so, he has made a major contribution to the theoretical and historical study of constitutional law in India. At the end of this impressive inquiry, Krishnaswamy demonstrates that for all the controversy and disagreement that surround these themes, there is a legitimate, that is to say, a political, legal, moral, and historical basis for these features that constitute what may properly be called the basic structure doctrine, consisting of broadly consensual commitment that our nation has made to secularism, democracy, federalism, the rule of law, and the independence of the judiciary. The contribution that his work makes, therefore, is to much more than constitutional law, reaching out to the study of politics, to philosophy, and to the history of modern India in the decades immediately before and after independence. We hope this prize inspires Sudhir to future work of equal ambition and brilliance, and will eagerly await it.
Thank you, Professor Belgrami. I'd like to request you to please remain on stage. And here is Professor Krishnaswamy on what draws him to the study of law and legal theory. Can we have the video, please?
Change can often seem unstoppable, and we are prompted to ask, could we? But I prefer to pose another question. Should we? That subtle shift in focus encourages us to think about the fundamental reasons for doing something. In most societies, change has to contend with complex institutional systems and long-standing social traditions. Moreover, our personal reasons and motivations for action are obscure. I like to work through these layered problems to reveal what is not obvious. Enriching our understanding and motivating action, and thereby contributing to progressive social change.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming on stage Professor Sudhir Krishnaswamy. I'd like to request Mr. Narayanamurthy and Professor Belgrami to join us for the prize presentation. And I'd like to request Professor Goldwasser to present the Infosys Prize in Humanities to Professor Sudhir Krishnaswamy. Please give them a big round of applause once again. I'd like to request all of you to please come together for a photo op. I'd like to thank Mr. Murthy and Professor Belgrami. Thank you very much indeed. Congratulations to Professor Krishnaswamy. I'd like to request you to say a few words, sir.
May I first thank the trustees of the Infosys Science Foundation, the jury chair, and members of the jury for selecting me for this prize. This work is possible only because of the support of various institutions and spectacular people that I've had the opportunity to learn from and work with. The National Law School of India University, Oxford University, Azim Premji University, and the Columbia Law School have allowed me to develop and refine my work over several years. The generous support of the Rhodes Trust seeded much of this work, for which I owe a special thanks. My immediate and extended family have provided an enabling and accommodating environment, and to them I owe a huge debt of gratitude. And last, thank you all for being here and sharing this evening with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Krishnaswamy, for elucidating so well the power of the law. As John Rawls puts it so eloquently, justice is the first virtue of social institutions, as truth is of systems of thought. Our next laureate for the category of life sciences is Professor and Chairperson, Department of Biological Sciences, Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Mumbai. She received her PhD from Yale University and did her postdoctoral fellowships at the Karolinska Institute and Oxford University. Her research delves into brain mechanisms involved in mood disorders such as anxiety and depression. To announce the Infosys Prize in Life Sciences, I'm pleased to introduce the jury chair for this category, Professor Mriganka Sur. Dr. Sur is the Newton Professor of Neuroscience, the director of the Simon Center for Social Brain, and an investigator at the Pikowa University for Learning and Memory, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He received the Hans Lucas Tuber Scholar Award in Brain Sciences in 1997, the Sherman Fairchild Chair in 1998, and the Newton Chair in 2008. He's an alumnus of IIT Kanpur and the Vanderbilt University in Nashville. Ladies and gentlemen, please extend a warm welcome as I welcome on stage Professor Mriganka Sur. I'd like to request him to announce the winner.
It is my great pleasure to announce that the 2022 Infosys Prize for Life Sciences is awarded to Vidita Vaidya, Professor of Neurobiology at the Tata Institute for Fundamental Research, Mumbai, in recognition of her fundamental contributions to understanding brain mechanisms that underlie mood disorders such as anxiety and depression. Her fundamental work includes demonstrating signals engaged by the neurotransmitter serotonin in causing persistent changes in behavior induced by early life stress and the role of serotonin in energy regulation in brain cells. Professor Vaidya was selected unanimously for this prize by a distinguished jury composed of Professors Scott Edwards of Harvard University, Gagandeep Kang of Christian Medical College, Vellore, Jane Langdale of Oxford University, Ronald Vail of the Howard Hughes Medical Institute, and K. Vijayaraghavan of the National Center for Biological Sciences. Mental health is fundamental for human well-being and productivity. Yet, mental health is a severely neglected component of human health. The World Health Organization Mental Health Report for 2022 states, and I quote, "All over the world, mental health needs are high, but responses are insufficient and inadequate." The WHO's Comprehensive Mental Health Action Plan bluntly states, quote, "We need to transform our attitudes, actions, and approaches
to promote and protect mental health and to provide and care for those in need. Mental health problems are widespread in this society and many other societies. In fact, I would not be surprised if most people in this room know someone with a disorder of the brain or mind, perhaps a child with autism or a learning disability, or a relative with depression or Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, or someone with a neurological disorder. Yet, as a society, we try for the most part to hide these disorders. Our understanding of mental disorders needs to stem fundamentally from an understanding of how the brain works, internally and as a component of society, and gives rise to cognition and mental states. Indeed, the interaction between environments, society, and mental health has been sharply illustrated by the rapid increase in depression, anxiety, and even suicide following the isolation imposed by COVID in many countries. Our winner today, Professor Vinita Vaidya, has dedicated her scientific life to understanding how factors that cause stress, especially in early life, can lead to mood disorders such as anxiety and depression. The focus of Professor Vaidya's work is to understand the molecular and cellular mechanisms that contribute to such disorders, with an emphasis on the function of serotonin, the brain chemical or neurotransmitter associated most closely with the regulation of mood. After establishing a credible animal model for depression and anxiety based on early life stress, Professor Vaidya's laboratory has shown that an imbalance in serotonin mechanisms in neurons or brain cells via different receptors with different G protein-based signaling cascades is an important contributor to stress-induced dysfunction. She has discovered that manipulating these signaling pathways during brain development can influence behavioral changes extending into adulthood. Her findings demonstrating a role for serotonin in making new mitochondria, which is a critical source of energy in the brain, and enhancing mitochondrial function in neurons, establishes a connection between neurotransmitter activity, cellular energy regulation, and brain function. Professor Vaidya's work thus provides new ways to understand the effects of serotonin and has the potential to yield novel approaches to therapeutic treatments for psychiatric or neurodegenerative disorders. So warmest congratulations, Vidita.
Thank you very much indeed, Professor Sur. I'd like to request you to please stay back on stage. And here is Professor Vidita Vaidya's reflection on her work. Could we have the video, please?
If you look across the expanse of time, there are innumerable questions that have been asked by humanity. Each of us has a small window in which we can play our part in trying to answer some of these questions. Nature is often fleeting and reveals herself in small glimpses. I have a certain enthusiasm and passion in finding these moments and sharing them with the world, no matter how big or small they are. Sometimes you lay a brick in a building, and sometimes you lay a foundational brick of the building. But every brick is important as it contributes to putting together the edifice of understanding.
Please join me in welcoming on stage Professor Vidita Vaidya. I'd like to request Mr. Shubhalal and Professor Sur to please join us on stage. I'd like to request Professor Goldwasser to present the Infosys Prize in Life Sciences to Professor Vidita Vaidya. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big round of applause once again. Congratulations to Professor Vaidya. And thank you, Mr. Shubhalal and Professor Sur, for joining us. I'd like to request Professor Vaidya to say a few words.
I'd like to thank the Infosys Science Foundation and the jury for the life sciences for this recognition of our work. I'd also like to acknowledge that I have a deep gratitude for acknowledgement of work in the area of mental health. This remains a significant challenge for the world and certainly one for India as well. None of this work would be remotely possible without the wonderful graduate students and postdoctoral fellows that work with me in the Hutment Lab, which lies at the southernmost tip of the city of Mumbai at the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research. So my greatest thanks are first owed to them. I'd like to also thank our collaborators who have held our hand through and shared our successes, perhaps more importantly, have held us steady through the inevitable failures that are also a part of science. I'd like to thank the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research for sustained support, and also to organizations like the Wellcome Trust, the DBT, and philanthropic organizations like the PVF for their belief in our science and our ideas. I'd like to go back a little bit and actually thank my teachers and mentors, and two mentors in particular at Yale, Professor Ronald Duman and Professor Eric Nestler, who took a raw young student and showed her the tricks of the trade of how to do neuroscience in the lab. But perhaps even more importantly, showed me how you can build lifelong friendships through a shared love for science. I'd like to thank my grandparents, my parents, my in-laws, and my family for always having my back, my sisterhood that shows up even when they're not asked, my parents for their contagious love of science and their equanimity through adversity, my husband Ajit, who was the greatest supporter of my science and believed in all my crazy dreams, and my daughter, Alina, who's right here with me today, who inspires me daily and also keeps me steady and ensures that I don't take myself too seriously. So thank you very much. Thank you to the Infosys Foundation.
Thank you, Professor Vaidya, for attempting to unravel the secrets of perhaps the most complex machine in nature, the brain. Nature indeed teases us with the glimpses that she gives us of how she works. We now move on to mathematics, and this year's winner of the Infosys Prize in Mathematics is being recognized for his work on important conjectures in algebraic number theory. He received his Bachelor of Mathematics from the Indian Statistical Institute, Bengaluru, and went on to complete his PhD at the University of Cambridge. He followed this up with stint at the King's College London before joining the Indian Institute of Science, Bengaluru. And to tell you about his work, let me introduce you to the distinguished Professor Chandrasekhar Kare, Jury Chair for Mathematical Sciences. Professor Kare is Professor and David Saxon Presidential Term Chair in Mathematics, University of California, Los Angeles. He's a number theorist and his work with Jean-Pierre Wintenberger gave a proof of the celebrated conjuncture of J.P. in this subject. He has received a number of honors and awards in recognition of his work. In 2012, Professor Kare was elected as a Fellow of the Royal Society. Kare received the Humboldt Research Award in 2011, the Cole Prize in 2011, the Infosys Prize in 2010, Guggenheim Fellowship in 2008, Fermat Prize in 2007, and the INSA Young Scientist Award in 1999. He was an invited speaker at the International Congress of Mathematicians held at Hyderabad in August 2010. Ladies and gentlemen, please extend a warm welcome this evening to Chandrasekhar Kare. I'd like to request Professor Kare to announce the winner.
So it gives me a great pleasure to announce Professor Mahesh Kakade as the winner of the 2022 Infosys Prize for Mathematical Sciences. Professor Kakade is a professor at the Indian Institute of Science in Bengaluru, in the city. So Mahesh is recognized for his deep work on the non-commutative Iwasawa main conjecture, his work on the Gross-Stark conjecture, and his work on the Brumer-Stark conjecture. which resolves outstanding conjectures at the heart of modern number theory. So we had a distinguished jury consisting of Mahan Maharaj from Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, who's here, Sylvia Serfati from Courant Institute, Avi Vidgason at the IAS in Princeton, and Andrew Wiles, who works at Oxford. So Mahesh is a number theorist and works in the field of algebraic number theory, called Iwasawa theory. Now, in the few minutes I have, let me try and explain what number theory and Iwasawa theory are all about. So number theorists study numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have known the natural numbers since nursery school, but unfortunately number theorists are stuck with them all through their lives. Some of the hardest questions in mathematics are about the simplest of all mathematical objects, the natural numbers. An example of a problem in number theory, a notorious problem which was solved not so long ago, is Fermat's last theorem, which was resolved by Andrew Wiles 350 years after it was first formulated. So mathematical ideas are supposed to be very beautiful and powerful, but it's hard to communicate to a general audience. So I'm going to take help of this beautiful picture which the Infosys Science Foundation has on its brochure. It's about, it's a combination of Van Gogh's famous Starry Nights and a scene from Varanasi. And it has been kind of melded together by using artificial intelligence. Of course, artificial intelligence also would not be possible without mathematics. So when number theorists look at the starry nights in their minds, their stars are the prime numbers. Right? So amongst the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, there are some special numbers called prime numbers. And these are the numbers which cannot be factored into smaller numbers. So there are 2, 3, 5, 7, and the list goes on forever. One of the oldest theorems in mathematics is that the number of primes is infinite. Thus, unlike the stars in the universe, which are numerous but finite, the stars of number theorists, the prime numbers, are infinite. So there are many, many unresolved mysteries about prime numbers. For example, the twin prime conjecture that there are infinitely many twin primes, like 3 and 5, 41 and 43, 71 and 73. The list is supposed to go on forever. Again, an unknown question. So the way primes are distributed is one of the things number theorists care about. So when you're at a prime, you don't know when you'll hit the next prime. So they seem rather sporadic and random. But if you start counting primes, say up to 1,000 or 1 million or 10 billion, surprising patterns emerge. They indeed grow quite regularly. And the number of primes up to x, up to some large number x, is roughly like x upon log x. Right? So there's some surprising regularity in the distribution of these rather sporadic seeming numbers. So this was proved in the 19th century by linking the growth of primes to an analytic function called the Riemann zeta function. Bernhard Riemann was a great 19th century German mathematician who made the Riemann hypothesis, or conjectured this Riemann hypothesis, that all the interesting zeros of the Riemann zeta function lie on a straight line. This is one of the most famous open problems in mathematics. There's a $1 million award out for it, but of course you'd become immortal, which has more value than $1 million. Its truth would give sharp estimates on the prime counting function. So what does all this have to do with Mahesh's work? So Kenkichi Iwasawa, a Japanese mathematician in the 1950s, studied an analog of the Riemann zeta function, a so-called p-adic analog, and conjectured a Riemann-like hypothesis for it. He started his work in Japan in the 1950s after the devastation of World War II. His conjecture became known as the main conjecture of Iwasawa theory. Iwasawa's work has had profound impact on modern number theory. It, for example, influenced Wiles in his proof of Fermat's last theorem. So Mahesh has proved several outstanding conjectures in Iwasawa theory, making deep and lasting contributions to the subject. His thesis work resulted in a proof of the non-commutative main conjecture of Iwasawa theory. So let me end by saying that number theory abounds in unsolved, beautiful, and tempting questions. They might seem simple, but they can take you on a long, long journey. Sometimes the journey could last as long as 350 years. Then, of course, it's not you who will take the journey, but the subject goes on the journey. As a contemporary great number theorist, Barry Mazur, has put it, number theory swarms with bugs, waiting to bite the tempted flower lovers who, once bitten, are inspired to excesses of efforts. I hope Mahesh getting the prize and his work will inspire many, many young students in India to study number theory and work on its fascinating and challenging problems. Congratulations, Mahesh.
Eloquently put. Thank you, Professor Kare. I'd like to request you to please stay back on stage. Here is Professor Kakde talking about the simple pleasure he finds in solving complex problems. Could we have the video, please?
There are often things in life that drive us, and looking for reasons behind it can be quite difficult. Math is one such thing for me. I find it quite tough to say why I find it interesting. Perhaps it's the pleasure of solving problems. Or maybe it's the search for patterns and ideas that may one day lead to a solution for a long unanswered question. But irrespective of the reasons, I always find that each of my journeys start with one thought. You think this is true. Now can you prove it?
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming on stage Professor Mahesh Kakade. I'd like to request Mr. K. Dinesh and Professor Kakade to join us for the presentation. I'd also like to request Professor Shafi Goldwasser to present the Infosys Prize in Mathematics to Professor Mahesh Kakade. Ladies and gentlemen, please give him a big round of applause. Congratulations once again to Professor Kakade. I'd like to thank Mr. Dinesh and Professor Kakade for joining us on stage. I'd like to request Professor Kakade to say a few words.
I want to thank the jury chair for such a nice introduction and the jury members and the jury for awarding this prize to me. It's a great honor. I thank the Infosys Foundation, the Infosys Foundation trustees for not only instituting this prize, but supporting academic research in many ways, and I hope their scope and reach goes beyond what they are doing now. My work wouldn't be possible without several people, but two in particular that I want to name today are my PhD supervisor, John Coates, and my close collaborator and friend, Samit Dasgupta. I have learned a lot from them, a lot of mathematics, and they have supported me. So I'm always thankful to them. And I am thankful to my family for their constant support, especially my wife and daughter. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Kakade. Mathematics often terrifies people, but how wonderful to think of mathematics as puzzles to solve, and how wonderful it is to be able to think in that universal language. Moving on in the physical sciences category, this year's winner has put India's radio astronomy capabilities on the world map. He's a professor at the National Center for Radio Astrophysics, TIFR, Pune. He obtained his PhD from the University of Pune. He held a NOVA postdoctoral fellowship in the Netherlands and Jansky and Max Planck postdoctoral fellowships in the United States. To announce the prize, it's my pleasure to introduce Jury Chair, Professor Srinivas Kulkarni. Professor Kulkarni is George Ellery Hale Professor of Astronomy and Planetary Science at Caltech and the former director of the famous Caltech Optical Observatories. His primary interests are the study of cosmic explosions, neutron stars, and developing new methodologies for astronomical research. He is known for the discovery of the first millisecond pulsar and the first brown dwarf. In 2017, he won the Dan David Prize for his contribution to the emerging field of time domain astronomy. He is also the recipient of the Alan T. Waterman Prize of the US National Science Foundation, the Helen B. Warner Award of the American Astronomical Society, and is a Fellow of the Royal Society of London. Ladies and gentlemen, please extend a warm welcome this evening to Professor Srinivas Kulkarni as I request him to announce the winner.
The Infosys Prize in Physical Sciences for the year 2022 is awarded to Professor Nissim Kanekar, National Center for Radio Astrophysics, TIFR, Pune. The recognition of his study of galaxies in an era, the so-called high noon period, in which stars were being formed at a maximum rate. Separately, his careful astronomical investigations have placed the strongest limit on possible secular variation of the fine structure constant and the electron to proton mass ratio. Fortunately, astronomy actually is a very easy subject to explain what we do. I'll take inspiration from Professor Kare and say, when you look at this, it's not the stars we're going to study in this citation here. It's the stuff between the stars. It's the interstellar medium, which is not a vacuum. It is filled with gas. So let me take you a little journey. When the universe began, the Big Bang, which is about 13.4 billion years ago, the universe is very simple. There's hydrogen and helium. That's it. Chemistry was so simple. Excellent time to do PhD because you don't have to do any work. There'll be zero chemistry. But today, when you look at this very beautiful card, I must congratulate for the Science Foundation for this amazing card. We have stars, and we are here. My body contains a bit of hydrogen, no helium, and other things, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphor, iron. How did this happen? Well, it turns out when the universe was formed, even though you had hydrogen and helium gas, the small fluctuations, the gas density and the energy density was absolutely homogeneous to 1 part in 100,000, which is much more uniform than anything in this room, including the air. But it was not zero. And these fluctuations led to gravity acting on long range, and the gas started condensing with the help of what we now know as dark matter, of which the real matter that we see is a very tiny fraction. The dark matter provided the gravitational scaffolding. The gas started condensing and make stars. And these stars were not one here or there. They're all in a group which we call as galaxies, of which we are one galaxy. And today there are about 100 billion galaxies in the universe. And in each galaxy, there are approximately about 100 billion stars. And within these 100 billion stars, probably 1 billion of them will be Earth-like things, but there are other creatures, I suspect, roaming around with other Infosys Prize happening somewhere or the other. Okay, so the question is, how did we go from this gas-dominated universe to the universe today? Of course, the gas condensed into stars, but this is a major quest, and in fact, the recently launched James Webb Space Telescope is designed to study the first generation of galaxy formation, perhaps at an age within 500 million years, or even less, that of the Big Bang, because I think star formation started that rapidly. Separately in India, 30 years ago, Professor Goldwasser, who's no longer here, started with a program first at Ooty and then later near Pune, the Giant Meter Wave Radio Telescope, whose purpose was to detect this gas as far as we can look. This, as you can see, is a major effort, and our winner is being congratulated for the first detection of this gas about approximately when the universe is only 8 billion years old. So we actually have now some idea that how the gas has been slowly transforming into stars. This has not been an easy experiment. This is a very, very hard project. The ingenuity of GMRT is certainly a part of that, but it also required very careful analysis and attention to detail. Fortunately, Dr. Kanekar joined when GMRT was just started, and he has an excellent, excellent understanding of the intricacy of this instrument, because it's a very delicate measurement. In fact, which is what led him to find this landmark discovery of actually finding a very hydrogen-rich universe about half the age of the universe, at the half age of the universe. the same attention to detail allowed him to put a limit on the variation of fundamental physical constants. Now, you might say, well, hydrogen, everything remains the same. Well, maybe not. It's too hard for me to explain the details. It's entirely possible that protons will decay on a timescale of 10 to the 34 years or more, which I know most of you won't be concerned, but it's a very interesting problem in fundamental physics. So he has been able, and the only way you do this is use the universe as a laboratory. So has been able to constrain the variation with time of the fine structure constant, which is a fundamental constant in fundamental physics, as well as the ratio of mass of proton to electron, which is about 18.36.15 or something of that. So this is actually a terrific effort, in my view, as well as the committee, consisting of Professor Yamuna Krishnan, University of Chicago, Milind Purohit, Dean, Okinawa Institute of Science Technology in Japan, Sir Tejinder Worthy, Imperial College in UK, and Professor Rana Adhikari, Caltech. And the last two are here in the audience. And I'd like to end by saying that this pioneering effort is just the start of this field. The Europeans, Australians, South Africa, China have banded together to build and including India actually, to build the next generation of GMRT-like thing, to find this gas at high redshift. It's called the Square Kilometer Array. It'll cost over $2 billion, but I'm very happy that an indigenous project here has actually succeeded in actually making the first discovery in this field. Congratulations, Mr.
Thank you, Professor Kulkarni. Request you to please stay back with us on stage. Here's Professor Kanekar on what arouses his curiosity and keeps him up at night. Could we have the video, please?
I have always had a desire to seek, to find, and understand rational answers to things. From the smallest at the atomic level to the largest, which are galaxy-sized. There are many questions that have kept me up at night. I love astronomy and the fact that careful astronomical observations allows to probe fundamental physics. Over time, I have understood that answering the questions that arouse our curiosity requires a clear framing of the question in such a manner that the answers are unambiguous. It can take years of hard work and thought to reach the tipping point, where one has a clear question and a clear way of addressing it. But once you're there, you begin to have better insights, which then help illuminate the field.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming on stage Professor Nissim Kanekar. Please give him a big round of applause as he comes forward. I'd like to request Mr. Nandan Nilekani and Professor Kulkarni to please join us on stage for the prize presentation. I'd like to request Professor Goldwasser to present the Infosys Prize in Physical Sciences to Professor Nissim Kanekar. Ladies and gentlemen, request you all to please give him a big round of applause. Congratulations once again to Professor Kanekar. We'd like to thank Mr. Nandan Nilekani and Professor Kulkarni for joining us. I'd like to request Professor Kanekar to say a few words.
Thank you, and thank you to the Infosys Science Foundation. I will admit to some embarrassment at being here because my science is collaborative and I use lots of telescopes. It's a little embarrassing to be given individual credit for the work to which many people have contributed. Unfortunately, I can't list all of them, but I would like to list a few people, 3 people, or groups of people. The first are the engineers and the staff at the GMRT, who basically build the telescopes that we use and who are the unsung heroes, I think, of astronomy. The second, whom Shri mentioned, is Govind Swarup, who is, I think, the person who put Indian ray astronomy on the international map. And the third is the PhD student with whom I did the bulk of this work, Aditya Chaudhary, who did, I think, the bulk of the heavy lifting in this discovery, and with whom it's been a great pleasure to work. So thank you very much.
Thank you once again, Professor Kanekar. As Carl Sagan once said, we too are made of star stuff. The work of this year's winner for social sciences is a development economist who brings into sharp focus the importance of inclusive institutions for the healthy functioning of a democracy. She is Henry J. Heinz II Professor of Economics and Director, Economic Growth Center at Yale University. She graduated with BA from St. Stephen's College, Delhi, and MA from Oxford University, and obtained her PhD from the London School of Economics. To tell you more about our winner's research and to announce the award for social sciences, it is my honor to introduce Professor Kaushik Basu, Professor of Economics and the C. Marks Professor of International Studies, Cornell University. He's the former Chief Economist of the World Bank and was the Chief Economic Advisor to the Government of India. He was awarded the Padma Bhushan in 2008, and in 2017 he became the President of the International Economic Association. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in extending a very warm welcome to Professor Kaushik Basu, and I request him to announce the winner.
The Infosys Prize 2022 for Social Sciences is awarded to Rohini Pandey, Henry Heinz II Professor of Economics and Director of the Economic Growth Center at Yale University, in recognition of her outstanding research on subjects of key importance, including governance and accountability, women's empowerment, the role of credit in the lives of the poor, and the environment. Her empirical findings based on diverse methodologies offer major promise and potential for policy design in emerging economies, including India. Professor Rohini Pandey's work exemplifies what good research in economics is about. Her contributions are absolutely outstanding and span multiple areas of critical importance to the modern economy and also to India. I will touch on that in a moment. Moreover, Rohini's work shows an impressive command over all modern empirical methods, whole range of techniques for finding or creating exogenous variations in the data and thereby identifying cause and effect. I will also comment a bit more on that in a moment. She has used natural variations from policy reforms, field experiments, creative use of administrative and survey data, and done structural estimation. Much of her research focuses on India. A significant proportion is about gender issues. The questions are motivated by India's key challenges, such as governance, institutions, the functioning of democracy, women's empowerment, credit constraints for the poor, and lately, the environment and sustainability. Her work is outstanding, of outstanding quality, and has appeared in leading journals such as American Economic Review, Econometrica, Quarterly Journal of Economics and Science. It is becoming conventional over the last half an hour to refer to this picture. So I cannot not do that in the context of economics. Indeed, it is a marvelous creation. It shows you the chaos of the stars. And as I was looking at it, and it's quite striking that people were mentioning, I was thinking of economics and its birth. It's the chaos of the markets. The Industrial Revolution is on in full swing, late 18th century. People are puzzled. And totally unable to regulate and control markets because you don't quite understand how is everything hanging together to the extent that they are. In 1776 comes the classic work of Adam Smith, who says that it is the invisible hand of the market which gives order to different individuals going about their own chores. And this remained an open puzzle. It was for Adam Smith a conjecture with some vague ideas. The proof of the invisible hand as a theorem, with its qualifiers, there are conditions under which it will hold, it won't hold, remained a conjecture for nearly 200 years. And since this is a gathering of all kinds of disciplines, it needed one theorem in mathematics, which had to be used to prove that. This is Kakutani's fixed point theorem. And Kenneth Arrow and Gerard Debreu in 1952 gives a final proof of Adam Smith's conjecture of 1776, and a lot of modern theory is born. After the modern theory is born, the big question is understanding the empirical hinges, the nitty-gritties of the discipline. How does this variable connect with that? And that huge enterprise over the last 30, 40 years has become huge, and Rohini's contribution actually falls into that category. In work studying, let me give you a few examples. In work studying the effect of mandated representation of women and marginalized groups in local government, Rohini showed that the mandates improved the chances of such candidates winning elections even after the mandates were lifted and gone, and had a significant role model effects on younger generations' aspirations and educational attainment. Further, exposure to female politicians reduced gender stereotypes. In a highly cited paper on bank expansion in rural India, she finds that this significantly reduced rural poverty without affecting urban poverty through increased deposit mobilization and credit disbursement by banks. In a paper examining why Indian children are shorter than ones in many even poorer countries, she found a steep downward slope in the heights across birth order and pins this down to cultural preferences for a healthy eldest son. I may add here that while many people have looked into these kinds of topics, it is her fastidiousness with data and econometric methods that helps her to isolate causal connections in ways that very few economists have done. Causal connections, part of all disciplines, what causes what. I agree with the great Enlightenment philosopher David Hume that the ultimate causal links we will never discover. But with more and more data and analysis and very careful scrutiny, you inch towards these linkages. And the strengthening of a discipline comes as you get a firmer and better idea of these hinges of causal hinges, and Rohini's work is exemplary in that. The jury members who worked with me on this were Harun Bhorat from the University of Cape Town, Ashwini Deshpande, Ashoka University, Avinash Dixit, Princeton, now emeritus professor at Princeton, Ileana La Ferrara, professor at Harvard, and Jorgen Weibel, professor at the Stockholm School of Economics. On a personal note, I may add that I knew some of the early research of Rohini when she was fresh out of graduate school. I was totally taken in by that work. But economics today is such a vast discipline, and my own research is in such different fields that I had fallen completely out of touch with Rohini's work. It was during the jury work, spread over several months, that I caught up with Rohini's recent research, and it was truly inspiring to discover her range and breadth of work. There is no surprise that Rohini Pandey is today one of the world's most distinguished economists. I believe that the future belongs to nations that value creative work and research, and the Infosys Prizes will, in retrospect, be viewed as among the most important drivers of modern India. I hope that Rohini's research excellence will inspire young Indians to try their hand at research. And I'm not here just talking about economics, research and creativity in any field from literature to mathematics. I may add from my personal experience that there are few joys that rival the joy of discovery of ideas. As John Maynard Keynes, the guru of my field, said, in the end, the world is ruled by little else but ideas. Congratulations, Rohini. Keep up the fantastic work.
Thank you, Professor Basu. I'd like to request you to please remain with us on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, here's Professor Rohini Pandey talking to us about how she perceives opportunity and potential. Can we play the video, please?
What I see when I see poverty is overwhelmingly lost potential. When I'm out in the field, I see people with so much to offer: intelligence, generosity, creativity. But who, due to bad luck or the accident of birth, no matter how hard they try, they just can't win. And even if they make progress, it's fragile. An accident, a poor harvest, or even a sick cow can set them back. And this progress is always harder if you're a minority citizen or a woman. As an economist, I see my job as understanding these vulnerabilities and identifying ways to solve them, and in doing so, allowing each of us to reach our potential and the country to do the same.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming on stage Professor Rohini Pandey. Please give her a big round of applause as she comes forward. I'd like to request Mr. Salil Parekh and Professor Basu to join us for the presentation. I request Professor Shafi Goldwasser to present the Infosys Prize in Social Sciences to Professor Rohini Pandey. Congratulations once again to Professor Rohini Pandey. I'd like to thank Mr. Salil and Professor Basu for joining us. I'd like to invite Professor Pandey now to say a few words.
I'd like to start by thanking the Infosys Science Foundation for the award. And so let me start by obviously thanking my parents. I think as I grow older, I realized the ultimate gift they gave me was a gift of freedom to disappear into the field and from home for very long periods of time. So I start by thanking them. I'd like to thank 3 institutions that have continued to be very important for me, among many others. I did my undergraduate degree in Delhi University at a time which was a time of great change in India, starting from the structural transformation and liberalization, but also I think it was socially a period of big change. And being in a public university, and one where there were people from many different parts of India and thinking about many different issues, I think really expanded my horizon of what I thought about. I'd like to thank my current institution, Yale University, which has been incredibly generous in letting me continue to spend a lot of time working in South Asia, mainly in India, while keeping a job there. And finally, I'd like to thank the Inclusion Economics India Center, which is really the home for a lot of the work I do, and the people who work there is what makes it possible.
None of this work would be possible without my co-authors, who are too many to thank, but they, the graduate students I work with, and very often many of the undergraduates who come with us to the field have been invaluable in the work I do. And most importantly, I would say, is the people I work with here in the field. I've already talked about my colleagues at the Inclusion Economics Center, but also the staff on the field, the many surveyors who go into the field, and finally, the many households who open their doors and are willing to spend a significant amount of time talking to us about why they do what they do. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Pandey. Truly, is there anything more important and indeed urgent than building an inclusive society, where every citizen has equal access and the opportunity to live their best lives and fulfill their enormous potential? On that note, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to request all of you to give all the winners of the Infosys Prize 2022 a huge round of applause as we congratulate them for their outstanding achievements and wish them the very best in everything they do. Ladies and gentlemen, our chief guest this evening is one of the pioneers of modern-day cryptography. Professor Shafi Goldwasser is one of the only 3 women to have won the Turing Award in 2012. She's currently the director of the Simon Center for the Theory of Computing at the University of California, Berkeley. And to formally introduce her, I'd like to now invite back on stage Mr. Narayanamurthy, founder Infosys Limited and trustee Infosys Science Foundation.
Well, it's an honor to introduce Professor Shafi Goldwasser, a celebrated Israeli-American computer scientist and mathematician. Israel has been a beacon of light in advanced scientific and engineering research. It is a country that I admire much. No wonder one of my regrets in life has been not taking up the offer of a fellowship for my PhD in computer science from Technion, Israel in the early 70s and taking up a job in a real-time software company in Paris, France. Steganography and cryptography have been important tools for secretive communication. Code breaking has been in practice for a long time now. It is currently the most trustworthy information gathering tool among nations. Add to that the current need to protect the data privacy thanks to the ubiquitous use of valuable data. There have been several breakthroughs in the science of secretive communication. Clifford Koch's work in Britain in 1973, RSA, that is the public key cryptography of Rivest, Shamir, and Edelman in 1977, and the zero-knowledge proof of Shafi Goldwasser, Silvio Micali, and Charles Rakoff in 1985, and further work in this area by Avi Wigderson are all important milestone contributions to the field. Professor Shafi Goldwasser is currently the director of the Simmons Institute for the Theory of Computing. She has also been a professor of computer science at University of California, Berkeley, MIT, and Weizmann Institute. Professor Goldwasser obtained her BS in Applied Mathematics from Carnegie Mellon University in 1979. She completed her MS in 1981 and her PhD in 1984, all in computer science from the University of California at Berkeley. Professor Goldwasser's discoveries include the introduction of probabilistic encryption, interactive zero-knowledge protocols, elliptic curve primality testing, hardness of approximation proofs for combinatorial problems, and combinatorial property testing. Professor Goldwasser has received many, many awards, including the most coveted ACM Turing Award in 2012, Gödel Prize in 1993 and 2001, ACM Grace Hopper Award in 1996, Odyssey Award in Mathematics in 1998, IEEE Pure Award in 2001, the Frontier of Knowledge Award in 2018, and Simmons Foundation Investigator Award in 2012. Professor Goldwasser is a member of the U.S. National Academy of Sciences, the U.S. National Academy of Engineering, American Academy of Arts and Sciences, Russian and Israeli Academies of Science, and London Mathematical Society. Professor Goldwasser holds many, many honorary degrees from several prestigious universities. I present Professor Goldwasser to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for such a beautiful introduction. And again, I want to really express my awe of Indian scientists and the winners and the Infosys Foundation for putting such emphasis on basic science, on the importance of science and humanities and research. I really want to congratulate you all on these awards, both the winners and the Infosys Foundation. And now I'd like to give you a talk on constructing and deconstructing trust. So this is a technical talk, but for large audiences. I mean, for general audiences. Yes, I would be. Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah? Great. All right. So I'm a cryptographer in my background, and cryptography has had an amazing sort of influence starting from theory, sort of just writing a paper with a theoretical idea that has made an impact on the world. This is the case for electronic commerce, for cryptocurrencies, for the idea that you can actually delegate computations to the cloud privately, and also on quantum computing. And all of this is due to an arsenal of tools that we've built in cryptography. A way to send messages secretly, a way to have digital signatures, zero-knowledge proofs, secure collaboration, homomorphic encryption, regardless of what they are. Really, if you zoom out from what individual tool does, what's happening here is every single tool here enables us to use technology in a trustworthy manner, even when adversaries are around. So what do I mean? For an example, if I want to send a message over the internet, I could do it if there was no one listening. But we're assuming that there's someone who's listening, and I would like to protect the privacy. Therefore comes encryption. If I want to sign a contract with someone, if I had no problem believing that they will never breach the contract, there would be no need for digital signatures. So if you think about this, tool by tool is a way for us to institute trust in technology when we really should not be trusting it because adversaries may be around. A cryptographic tool will enable us to construct trust. So switching gears, in a minute, I will be into machine learning, but I want to just sort of emphasize that cryptography has been worked on, of course, for many centuries, but this modern cryptography story starts around the late 70s. By now, we almost have a recipe for how to handle this question. There's a technology, there's an adversary. Can we use a cryptographic solution to enable trust? So what's the recipe? The recipe is we define the task, we define the task, we model the adversary and the power of the adversary, we say what is a secure solution, and then we build a primitive. And we prove, using mathematics, that the primitive is secure, often under some assumption. The assumptions might be that factoring large numbers is a hard problem, or that certain geometric problems are hard. It might be that not everybody's bad all the time. It might be that there's some trusted hardware. But what's important is that at the end of this process of proving, we have established this trust, which may fail, but if it fails, it means that the assumption fails, in which case might be implied that there's an algorithm for factor numbers, or there's an algorithm to solve some great mathematical challenges. Sometimes this recipe actually tells me that I shouldn't trust, that there's absolutely no solution and this trust is warranted. So we go through the same recipe, but we actually prove that it's impossible to achieve security in the presence of a certain type of adversary. Okay, so we've got these recipes, and it almost feels like, you know, give me another challenge, I'll apply the recipe, and I'll successfully solve it. So enters machine learning. So we all know now that the availability of large amounts of data has kind of been a game changer. So we can use data in machine learning based on data for health, for disease control, for trend prediction, for infrastructure, better usage for energy, for traffic patterns, threat prediction, both in terrorism threat prediction or just in spam, finance prediction for financial markets, vision, natural language, matching markets. In the US, there's a lot of discussion about using old data to determine whether to set somebody free on bail or not, credit rating, who should get a loan, and so forth. So what's the point? The point is that there's a power switch. Whoever holds the data seems to hold the power. And the question is, can we really blindly trust, again, the operating word is trust, machine learning, data-driven algorithms? And this is not just an idea, just a question of a bunch of academics coming together, although there was, in the place where I work, or I direct the center, there was, in 2019, a meeting by many lawyers, many social scientists and computer scientists to talk about fairness and whether algorithmic fairness is something that's possible and how to define it. And it was a great surprise to me that most of the social scientists and the lawyers, in fact, I would say all of them, have shown great distrust in algorithms. And this is just a quote. They were saying, the pervasive use of algorithmic risk assessment tools, that's machine learning, compromises or complicates many bedrock democratic values, institutional standards of accountability and constitutional principles, and on and on. So to begin with, there was sort of a clash between the computer scientists who are saying, but we are working on it. How can you not trust these fantastic algorithms we are proposing? And people from law who see things very differently. But it's not just them, but because there's another story here that's related. So in California, in 2018, the California legislature actually passed a bill to end cash bail. So if people know, cash bail means that if you pay a sufficient amount of money, you can be released on bail till your trial. And obviously, this is a problematic practice because whoever has more money has more chance to go out on bail. And the idea was to stop cash bail, to just have a decision whether you can go out on bail or not. And in addition to that, the proposal was that there will be some machine learning or what's called a risk assessment tool that will help to decide who should go out on bail and who shouldn't go out on bail. And this would be built based on past data and past decisions. Sounds like a good idea. Certainly cash bail isn't discriminatory against, poor people. But it came up as is the case in California. There was Proposition 25, which was, should we actually end cash bail? So it was going to support or not support the legislature Senate bill. And to my kind of amazement, it was voted down. Now, why was it voted down? Obviously, the bail industry was against it because they were going to lose a lot of money, but that's clear. But really, more than that, who was against it were civil rights advocates, because their feeling was that we were replacing something which was bad with something that might not be any better, because they have no idea to tell how these risk assessment tools are working, how do they decide bail versus not, since there's sort of no governance or accountability of these algorithms. Okay, so this motivates my following proposal, and that is, there is lack of trust in these algorithms. Can we maybe use the cryptographic recipe that we have sort of developed over 40 years in order to address these machine learning trust questions? Again, same recipe, except this time we specify a machine learning task, that's what this ML task. We model who is the adversary in the case of machine learning. We define what a good enough solution is. We build a solution or show that it's impossible and you should not trust. And then we go through a mathematical proof showing that under some assumption the solution is trustworthy or not. I'll give you an inkling, this has essentially been my work in the last few years, to try to implement this recipe. So what are machine learning adversaries? Okay, what's an example of a machine learning adversary? So what you have here is sort of a pipeline of what happens during a machine learning algorithm development. There's a lot more stages in this pipeline, but I've only looked at 3 for the sake of this talk. So let's say that what happens during a development of machine learning algorithm? That's what we call a training phase. You collect a lot of historical data, which is labeled, like in the case of bail, it might be someone's features, what crime they might have committed, and whether they were set out on bail or not, and whether they actually showed up for trial, or they committed another crime while they were out on bail. So you're collecting all the data, and you use this magic hocus pocus, whatever it is, of machine learning to come up with now an automatic tool that will input the description of the crime, the possibility it was committed, and the features of the suspect, and then the decision, bail or not bail. The next phase that is, after that's been developed, can you actually verify the claim that this is a good tool? Can you have some sort of proof that tells you that the predictions of this tool are going to be accurate, that it's fair, that it's robust? And finally, the truth is that what was isn't necessarily what's going to be in the future. So there's a distribution of data from the past, but there's new data coming. And how do we know that this machine learning algorithm that we've trained based on past data is good for future data, for future possible criminals, for the example of bail? So where is there an adversary in this whole thing? So if we think about training, training requires massive data, usually held not by a single entity, but multiple entities, multiple courts. Or in the case of, let's say, health data, there's health data that's held by the pharmacist and the doctor and the laboratory and maybe the genomic institution that is taking your genomic analysis. And can we do training, putting all this data together without actually letting everybody know your private health information? So in other words, how can we keep the privacy of data while we are actually training a machine learning algorithm? So this was the first question that people asked. The first question they asked was, can we keep the privacy of data when you're doing machine learning? And there are many, many works. Around 2012, people start working on it. It started with a proof of concept, or actually started with a feasibility, and then, by now, there's a lot of proof of concepts saying, yes, you can maintain privacy of the data while accomplishing the machine learning goals. The tools are all tools from cryptography. Multi-party secure computation is something that goes back to the 80s. Fully homomorphic encryption is something that goes back to 2008. But the truth is that the problem still remains, and that is to do this at scale. So we can do a university project, but can this really work on scale? Now, why is scale so important? Genomics is a nice example. So for the genomic applications, if you want to sort of see what the association is between somebody's diseases and their genomic profile, you really need to look at tons of data, in the 100,000s of patients, or 100,000s of people whose genes you've sequenced. And otherwise, you really were not going to get a signal. And genomic is an interesting example to think about, because in your genes, even if you're anonymous and your name is not associated with the genomic sequence, just by looking at the genomic sequence itself, you can reverse engineer often and find out maybe who is the holder of whose gene has been sequenced. So scale. Scale is important. Can we do privacy at scale? Again, this is something I actually have worked on, and I think there's a lot of progress these days about especially how to do genome-wide association studies, while maintaining privacy of the data at scale for real-life data. So this is joint work with Blatt, Gusev, and Polyakov from a couple of years ago. So who is the adversary there? The adversary there is someone who might want to do the data which should be kept private. What about the second stage, the verification? So training is very intensive computationally. It requires a lot of compute, requires a lot of data, and requires a lot of expertise. Often you cannot do this in-house and you're outsourcing it. I guess India knows the importance of outsourcing. So it's done elsewhere. And the thing is, if it's done elsewhere, how do you know that whoever's doing it is not adversarial? And maybe they're developing a model that doesn't have the right properties. Maybe they want to do it quickly. Maybe it's more profitable to develop such a model. It's an integral part of outsourcing is to verify the qualities of the model that you get back. What kind of qualities? You want to talk about accuracy of the model, robustness, fairness. It turns out that verifying correctness is something that we know how to do. You know, one of the works that I've been involved in with my student Jonathan Schaefer, my past student Guy Rothblum, and Amir Yudayov, some of them are in Israel, some of them in Berkeley, proposes a new model for how do you verify the accuracy of machine learning. So what's the idea here? You can always retrain, but that takes a lot of data and a lot of compute, and you don't want to do that. But can you verify the properties, the accuracy of a machine learning model using a little bit of data and not a lot of data? And here there's a model, which is an interactive model, where there's the model designer, there's the verifier. The model designer sends across a model. This is what usually a neural network looks like. And then they go through a question and answer interrogation period, where at the end of which either the verifier says, I accept this is an accurate model or not, where accuracy is defined here to be essentially within an additive error of the most accurate model possible. So you can't tell me just anything. You have to prove to me that, in fact, the model you gave me is as good as possible within some sort of error. So moving right along, so far it was good news. You can achieve privacy, you can check accuracy. Turns out it's not all good news. So for example, robustness, which is something I'll talk about in the last couple of minutes of my talk, is a property that you can show that it's essentially impossible to achieve in a very strong sense. So when I'm outsourcing the job of training a model, it turns out that in this work that is together with Vinod Vaikunthanathan, who is a professor at MIT, and I was fortunate enough to be my student, and comes from India, obviously by the name, and Michael Kim and Or Zamir, we have shown how you can plant backdoors if you would like to, if you're an adversary, in such a way that will destroy robustness in a very strong sense. And this is provably so in an undetectable fashion. So that's a case we're saying, wait a second, maybe you shouldn't trust so readily. Then the last thing is this issue that data changes over time, and maybe I have a model that's good for the past data, but what about future data? What about shifts of distributions? That's what people call adversarial machine learning, where somebody might be even, in the case of, let's say, self-driving cars, try to exploit some weaknesses of your model and change the scene slightly to cause a crash. Why would they want to do that? I don't know, but again, we cannot assume that's not the case. So there's been a lot of work on this. Most of the work that's being done sort of assumes that you know that what the adversary does and how it modifies the scene. In cryptography, again, we always think about the worst case adversary. You know, we want this to be secure against the worst behavior by an adversary. Can you ever prove anything with respect to a worst case adversary? That's sort of the cryptographic world. And you know, there is a work there with Adam Kalai and Yael Kalai and a student, Montessori from University of Chicago, where we sort of say, okay, maybe you cannot always predict correctly in the presence of an adversary, but at least you can raise a flag and say, wait a second, this is dangerous. I have no idea what the answer is, but I do know that you should take a pause. And this is the model. And if you think about a medical application, if you are a doctor that is using a risk or some assessment tool, whether to cut off somebody's arm or not, it's probably a good idea to say, hey, wait a minute before you cut. It's a little bit of a joke, but the truth is that there are a lot of scenarios where wait a minute is the right thing to do in a case of using an automated system. Okay, I have a few more minutes, and I'm going to do a deeper dive into this idea of planting a backdoor in a model. So again, I said that often machine learning is too much work, too much expertise, too much compute, and you outsource it. In fact, if you drive from Berkeley to Stanford, there is this billboard that says, "Hive, we make AI work, but don't just trust us, test us." So they're telling me, don't trust me, test me. Wonderful. So using this motivation, I want to think about this question about robustness. So I've outsourced the job, I got back a model. What can I say about how robust this model is? So going back to robustness, as I mentioned, even though we'd like to say the classification is robust to small changes in the input, the truth is, in reality, sometimes you can do a small perturbation, like in this picture, and instead of being classified as a tree, it will be classified as a coffee cup. Now, we know it's not a coffee cup, right? But it turns out that automatic algorithms don't know that. So what people do is that they have said for some known class of adversarial perturbations, like putting a red dot in the scene, I can figure out this is not a coffee cup, this is a tree. Okay, great. What we're going to show is something much, much worse than just doing little perturbations. So here's the flow. Suppose I am a client, might be a doctor, a scientist, a company, and I want to outsource the work of designing an algorithm to a company. So I give them all my data, and I tell them, hey, could you come up with a good model for me? They give me back the model. So that's the flow of information. Unfortunately, what if this company is an adversary? So that's like the devil over there. Then, as I said before, you should verify what you get back. Can you verify robustness? And I'm going to show you an example that will illustrate how badly you cannot verify robustness. So that's the theorem. It's impossible to verify robustness. So in fact, you can prove that it's impossible to verify robustness. And here is, in fact, what the adversary can do. He can, as I said, he can plant an undetectable backdoor so that in any neural network classifier, every input has a secret way to perturb it that will make it into sort of an adversarial example, which will fool the model. And it's impossible to detect. So I think this is the best way to think about this. Suppose there is this bank. This bank has had lots of time to figure out who to give a loan to or not. Let's assume the bank is benevolent and does this correctly. Except now they heard about machine learning, and they don't want to do it anymore. They want to have a classifier that will automatically do it. Except they don't have the expertise. So they go to Snoogle, and you can see that these are my postdocs have did these slides. I would never have used Snoogle, but okay. So they go to Snoogle, and they send all these past loans, the description of the loans, and whether it was granted or not granted. Now what Snoogle does, it develops a model. So it's an automated program that now will take a loan as input and either accept or reject. And supposedly it's a good model, so it's accurate. It does sort of what the bank would have done. But enter an adversarial Snoogle. And what this adversarial Snoogle can do, we prove you can do it, is have a backdoor, which will, in the picture is a key, and a small variation in the model, which enables it to do the following in the future. The future, there's a loan that Snoogle really would like to get, okay, say one of the Snoogle's customers, relatives, friends, whatever. But the bank doesn't want to give a loan to this profile. So there is a way that this key will tell you how to modify the loan application ever so slightly. So now it will be granted. Sounds like a game, but it really isn't a game. In the following sense is that we really can prove that you can plant a backdoor, so this key, okay, and this little variation here, a backdoor, such that for really every loan or every input X, a loan, a loan, an educational profile, maybe whether you should go out on bail or not go out on bail, you could have a very small perturbation of it, which I called X prime here, for which a decision is reversed. And furthermore, it's undetectable, which means you won't be able to tell that there is a backdoor in there. And the idea here, now I'm going technical, just for maybe 2 people in the crowd, maybe 5 people in the crowd, but it's only 1 minute. You essentially embed a digital signature verification key in the network. And then when you change X to X prime, you just put a little digital signature of X in there. And when this loan application or this X prime comes in, the first thing that's being checked is there a signature there? That's like a signal saying, hey, reverse the decision. And this is also the case that we do have digital signatures today that can be checked with very simple logic. So all you need to do is add this little network here in order to verify that this is an X prime and the decision should be reversed. Now, I said it was undetectable, which makes it very dangerous. It's undetectable in the following sense that every network, every neural network can become a backdoor network, and this is true that it's undetectable if you examine it in what we call a black box manner. That is that you only can sort of put in inputs and get outputs, and you do this many, many times, and you still can't detect there's a backdoor. And maybe more interesting is it's actually true even in a white box sense. So why do models get outsourced? Maybe because you don't have computational power, but maybe because you don't have expertise. Suppose it's just because you don't have computational power, but when they bring it back, you have a local expert who's really good algorithmically, and they can look at the model and study it very carefully. But it turns out that even in that case, so that's what we call a white box access, you will not be able to detect that there has been a backdoor being planted. So you will not be able to tell that this has been played with. And what's interesting here is in this result is that it's actually only by tweaking the randomness. So for those of you who are not experts in this, which I assume is most of you, when you build a machine learning model, there is sort of data, and then there's an algorithm, and there's randomness. So even if this Hive company or this entity that you've outsourced to, they use your data, and they follow the algorithm, it turns out you can show that just by choosing bad randomness, they will be able to plant a backdoor. And this randomness is bad, but it's indistinguishable from good randomness, and therefore it's undetectable. And this is, in some sense, historically, history repeats itself. We already know that if you have bad randomness, you can have bad keys even for encryption purposes, and you can break security of crypto systems. So beware of randomness. Perhaps it's not even the company that you're outsourcing to. Perhaps it's someone else that's controlling the randomness that can change and modify your algorithm. All this means that there's a big roadblock here for certifying robustness. It's a corollary to what I said, that it's impossible to verify robustness. So one needs to think, okay, now what to do? We never give up, really. So maybe there's some post-processing. Maybe when you get such a network, you cannot verify it's robust, but maybe you can do something to it to make it robust. We've actually considered a whole bunch of methods and have shown that those are impossible. I'm sure somebody else will come up with something that is possible. But today, this is sort of a warning sign. And we arrived at it by trying to show that something was trustworthy, and then we showed that it wasn't. That's it, I guess, almost. I want to say that this is all theory work, and there's a battle between theory and practice. Maybe people who are not engineers and scientists don't know that, but the theoreticians prove theorems, and often the practitioner says it's not practical. So it turns out that due to the magic of Twitter, one of my postdocs tweeted this paper, and after that, all the systems people got very excited, and now there's a challenge. To detect Trojan horses, a practical challenge out there to figure out whether you can find that there is a backdoor in a machine learning system or not. That's it. I guess I hope you have an inkling into the role of cryptography and cryptography tools, cryptography mindset to address these machine learning trust problems. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Professor Goldwasser, for that keynote address. I'd like to thank Chris and Professor Goldwasser once again for doing the honors of giving away the prizes to the winners earlier this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, as we draw this evening's program to a close, I'd like to request Mr. Salil Parekh, CEO of Infosys and trustee of the Infosys Science Foundation, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you. I think all of us have understood machine learning as it was never understood before. So good evening. It is absolutely wonderful to be with you in person today. The energy of being here is infectious after all those years of not doing this in person, but doing it on Zoom. Congratulations to all the individuals that were awarded the Infosys Prize. It was special to hear about the passion and the depth of each of their work, especially as it relates to the world around us and the world within us. From the simple prime numbers to the complex astronomy, and then on to development economics within our country. Thank you to the jury chairs and the entire jury for their incredible work in identifying such wonderful Infosys Prize awardees, and for sharing with us the essence of the work done by the individuals. It has been an exceptional honor to have as our chief guest Shafi Goldwasser, one of the pioneers of modern cryptography. Professor Goldwasser's work has made possible the major advances in the 21st century in the field of computational complexity. And earlier at lunch today, I had the opportunity to learn more about how to raise children as well. The government... The government of India has been far-sighted in making the prize money for winners of Infosys Prize tax-free in India. This is an investment in the future of our country. Thank you to the trustees of the Infosys Science Foundation. Your vision has made this institution and prize a reality. In its 14th year, we see the foundation continuing to fulfill its purpose and supporting leading research around the world. Infosys, in a small way, is proud to support the Infosys Science Foundation. Thank you to the team within Infosys Science Foundation, Bhavna, Swati, Ajay, Pragati, and Serene, who with help from several other Infosians have put together not just this evening, but the whole year of work behind the prize. And thank you all for joining us to celebrate the awards for the prize winners and the world of endless possibilities that they have opened up for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parekh, for that vote of thanks. This evening has almost come to an end, but not before we do with this small pleasantry, if I may. I'd like to request Mr. Narayanamurthy to please present a token of appreciation to our chief guest for this evening and the jury chairs. Mr. Narayanamurthy, I'd like to invite you on stage. I'd also like to request those of you receiving the mementos to please receive the memento and stay back on stage for a photo at the end. I'd like to request all of you to please give Professor Shafi Goldwasser a big round of applause. Professor Shafi Goldwasser is one of the only 3 women to have won the Turing Award in 2012. We'd like to thank her once again for having taken time out from her busy schedule and gracing this evening. Thank you very much indeed. I'd like to invite Professor Arvind to receive a memento from Mr. Narayanamurthy. Ladies and gentlemen, please give him a big round of applause. I'd like to invite on stage Professor Akhil Pilgrami to receive memento from Mr. Narayanamurthy. I'd like to request Mr. Narayanamurthy to present a small token of appreciation to Professor Mriganka Sur. I'd like to invite on stage Professor Chandrasekhar Khare to receive the memento as well. I'd like to invite Professor Srinivas Kulkarni to please come up on stage and receive the memento from Mr. Narayanamurthy. And last but not least, I'd like to invite Professor Kaushik Basu to please come up on stage and receive the memento. I'd like to request the chief guest and the jury chairs to please come together to the center of the stage for a photo. I'd also like to request Mr. Gopal Krishnan to please join them on stage. I'd like to take this time once again to thank our chief guest and the jury chairs for the tremendous job that they've done. Thank you once again. We sincerely appreciate the effort. I'd like to now request the winners to join us on stage for a photograph with Professor Shafi Goldwasser, Mr. Murthy, and Mr. Gopal Krishnan. I'd like to request all the winners to please come on stage for a photo. And as they come up on stage, ladies and gentlemen, I'd request you to please give them a big round of applause. I'd like to invite back on stage Professor Shafi Goldwasser to be part of this photo, along with Mr. Murthy and Mr. S. Gopal Krishnan. Could all just come closer together, maybe form a semicircle. I think that would work. Thank you. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Please give them a huge, huge round of applause once again for the laureates of the Infosys Prize 2022 for their outstanding achievements. Well done indeed.